In today's Leeds news, Stuart Dallas back in team training. German media criticise Aronson. Farke speaks to Piroe. 49ers continue legal case against Augustin. And Leeds didn't meet Paintsill's expectations. Hey folks, Jay here at The View with your Leeds United news on Friday the 22nd of September. We will try and do a podcast at some point, probably tomorrow after the game, more than likely. The way things are working out this week, just short week for me and trying to get everything crammed in. But we'll crack on, we'll get into the news and we'll start off with Stuart Dallas. Great news, finally some really good news. Last night The Athletic posted an exclusive about the return of Stuart Dallas to Leeds United team training. Dallas has been out for 18 months with a broken femur and has had some setbacks along the way which have slowed his progress. 18 months is a huge amount of time to miss from football, but last week a social account did post a tweet that stated that Stuart Dallas was expected to announce his retirement, which Dallas replied to himself, stating it was fake news. The tweet was then ultimately deleted, with the account then trying to claim that they were sharing other people's news, which wasn't a great look for them. However, despite the good news, it could be still several weeks before we see Stuart Dallas tog out in a Leeds United kit or make his way back onto the bench. You should expect, and we should all expect, some soft tissue damage. There are some potential delays that can pop up with a player coming back from being away for a significant amount of time. There are always setbacks along the way. You look at Patrick Bamford and Adam Forshaw when they missed a significant amount of time. You're looking at minor strains, minor injuries, calves, hamstrings, groin issues that can pop up in a recovery, because going from training individually and getting back to fitness isn't the same as stepping that up to team training where you're trying to get to a game level, match level tempo, which can cause other injuries as well. And obviously twisting and turning as well can cause problems as well when you've been out for such a long time. So don't expect to see him back on the pitch too soon. It's still a couple of weeks yet, but it is still a fantastic sight to see Stuart Dallas back in training, and I cannot wait to see the reaction that the player gets when he walks back out on Ellen Road sooner rather than later, hopefully. And let's move on and talk about Brenden Aaronson's time in Germany, and he has come in for some criticism this week on the back of his performance against Real Madrid. He came off the bench in Union Berlin's game against Real Madrid. They lost 1-0, but his performance has been criticised by German media. Aaronson has not managed to win back his starting place in the Union Berlin squad since his suspension, coming off the bench against Wolfsburg last week and coming off the bench against Real Madrid midweek. Berliner Zeitung's report on the game, and especially Aronson's performance, said that Aronson labelled Aronson as light and a shadow alternative, stating that one incident in particular where he won the ball and then gave it away cheaply, as the report says, and they said that he just simply needs to become more robust. Aronson's slight figure was a topic of consistent conversation last year with Leeds United fans, with Aronson going to ground far too often and far too easily for the player. The article claims that Aronson is simply not strong enough yet and for this level, and he gets pushed off the ball far too easily, which again echoes sentiments from Leeds United fans last season. However, it does point out, and we should also point out, that his technique and his work rate are fantastic and are excellent, and when in space, Aronson can be very, very effective. However, his slight figure, and this report again finishes off with this by saying his slight figure is going to slow his progression. It's a simple thing that needs to happen. They need to focus on getting him in the gym and getting him bulked up a bit more. Not a huge amount. He just needs a bit more strength. And that doesn't necessarily always come from a big upper body. That can just be stronger core strength and that kind of stuff as well. So there is work for Brenden Aronson to do. I hope he can get that work done. He's still very young. He still has time. But if he doesn't get the physique and he doesn't strengthen up a little bit, it will stop him from progressing into leagues where the games are slightly more physical. Germany, Italy, France, England. All those ones. So, got to have a look at that. But fingers crossed for Aronson that he can turn that one around. On Joel Piroe, I'm getting used to saying this name properly. Joel Piroe, Daniel Farke has been speaking. I spoke to him after he came off the pitch in the game the other night against Hull. Farke has a reputation for not speaking to players there and then. He likes to do his conversations in private with players behind the scenes. However, he did break from this tradition and take a different approach with Joel Piroe. This basically comes down to a conversation that was happened at half-time in the game against Hull, where Farke had said to Piroe, your opportunities will now come in the second half. Be ready, your goals are coming in the second half. And then withdrew him on the 60th minute due to Joe Rodon's red card and a change of plan. Farke said that he normally wouldn't approach people, but he felt that he needed to pull the player aside immediately. Piroe did not look too happy coming off the pitch, and they went with Georgina Rutter's pace over Joe Piroe's finishing, which may have affected Leeds slightly in the second half in that game. Farke said that he wanted to make sure the player had good feelings coming away from that game, and basically it said to him the reason why he withdrew him was that we had to change the plan, and also that not playing the full 90 minutes might actually be beneficial for Piroe coming into this weekend's game with 3 games in 6 days. Minding those minutes, keeping him sharp. So it could be a situation. He did say he's not always going to be in a position where he can play Jorginho Rutter ahead in front of Piroe, and there will be times where he needs to swap that around and change the dynamic. You could see situations where Piroe starts up front and somebody else comes into the 10, maybe Somerville or someone else can play in the number 10 position for the game coming into this weekend. So he will look to do that as well. But he said that he wanted to give the player good feelings straight away. I know that it wasn't a performance-based thing, that it was clearly just a plan needed to change, and a change of style. That was it. That was needed. So you got a player like Joel Piroe. It's probably important to make those decisions and make it clear to him why the player is being withdrawn. There's time and place for that. Sometimes you don't, sometimes you do. Take it as you are. Move on. Let's talk about the 49ers, and let's talk about the Jean-Kevin Augustin. We all thought this was gone, didn't we? We thought this was done and dusted and over. Well, there could be a bit of Radrizzani could be left a bit red-faced on this one. If things go the way that they could go. Last year, Radrizzani lost his appeal with FIFA over the fee or the contract payout for Jean-Kevin Augustin. FIFA ordering Leeds to pay the full £24.4 million fee for the player. That's his contract for the 5-year period. Leeds did lose an appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport on that, but it's now said that Leeds have AP News are now reporting that Leeds have now lodged another appeal with the Court of Arbitration over the amount of the settlement with the player that was delivered during Radrizzani's time at Leeds United. FIFA's ruling for Leeds to pay £24 million settlement last March could be reduced if the 49ers can be successful in this. If the 49ers can win this case, it would show their capability in this space versus what Radrizzani could do in this space as well, and taking this legal case on in the first place. 49ers did inherit this legal situation from Radrizzani when they bought the club, and are now looking to either reduce this or wipe it out completely in order to save some money for the club in a tricky financial year for Leeds. So it'll be interesting to see if they do it. It would leave a bit of would leave Radrizzani a little bit red-faced on this one. So fingers crossed they can get that done, but more news to come on that as and when we get it and when it comes out. So right now it's in progress. A appeal has been lodged against the settlement amount, which hopefully will then be reduced. Let's get on to the final story of the day, and it's about Joseph Paintsill's transfer to Leeds and what actually happened in this. We're getting more information about the transfers that didn't happen as the players come back from international duty and press conferences are done and players are talking. And when Joseph Paintsill has been talking with Heit Last Nuvis, I didn't pronounce that right, but it's close enough. Joseph Paintsill claims that Leeds United and Southampton failed to meet his expectations, and then that's why the move didn't happen. Leeds were willing to meet Genk's evaluation of £10 million for the player, and the Athletics' David Ornstein said that Paintsill was keen on a move to Leeds United after rejecting Southampton. There was also rumours of a financial settlement between the player and the club that wasn't done, and that was said to be the reason why it didn't happen. However, claims that he was keen on a move to Leeds and the financial thing now seem to be false, with Paintsill doing this interview during the week, and he's basically said that despite the claims that he was keen on a move to Leeds, it's not the case. Paintsill said that a move to the Championship just didn't meet his expectations. He said that it quickly became clear during conversations that Leeds and Southampton could not meet his expectations, and that he wants to play in the Premier League or at least within the top 5 leagues. He went on to say that Leeds United and Southampton are not bad clubs, but they just couldn't convince him that the move was the right move for him at this time. He finished off by saying that he wants to stay one more year with Genk and see what clubs present themselves to him next year. It's a player that's very much backing his ability here. He wants to play in top 5 leagues, thinks he's good enough to do that. There's an argument to say that the Championship is probably the 6th biggest league. If you look at the calibre player that's in that league and the style that's in that league, it's a very competitive league. But he obviously wants to go directly into those leagues and not have to do working to get up to them. So wait and see what happens in that. It could be a situation that is revisited in January. It could be a situation that's revisited at the end of the season if Leeds do get promoted. And wait and see what happens with there. The player is a very good player. Very good player. But we'll have to see what happens with that one as we move into the next sets of transfer windows. Not going to cover the press conference today because it's ages away. So I want to get this done and get this out. So fingers crossed we get some good news on the injuries on that one as well. I will be back probably tomorrow with the podcast for everybody, but I'll get more information on the community tab on the page as and when. It'll go to members first and then everybody else afterwards. But there should be some content over the course of the weekend. Have a great day. Fingers crossed, 3 points tomorrow. And I will talk to you and the podcast tomorrow at some point. Have a great day. Talk to you then. Bye.